Hey everyone and welcome to the channel. Today we're working on something a little different. I've been wanting to do a little more around the turning to projects into side hustle style content, and we're going to start here. So we're going to be turning a piece of scrap wood into a high-end serving board. If that sounds like something you're into, please hang around to see how we took something rough, cleaned it up, and then turned it back into something rough, but with some style. This project started off with a trip to my wood slab guy. He always has some cool offcuts around that he's happy to throw in with bigger pieces. I don't know exactly what species this is, but it has a cool live edge, and through the weathered exterior I can see some cool grain action. So I'll start off over at the joiner and get at least one side square. I know, I should face joint this piece, but it's too tall to fit across the face of my joiner. And now I can get it trimmed to length. This piece has a few cracks, which shouldn't matter too much as we're going to give this one a thick coat of epoxy, but I'll keep trimming off until I've removed the largest portion of the defects. And now that we're cut to length, I can feed it through the planer. I'm also in the situation that this piece is really close to the total thickness that I'm going to be needing, so I'll just take baby bites through the planer to try and remove as little as possible. And it looks like I've gotten lucky. It's come out of the planer at 90 degrees thankfully, and now we can try to resaw this thing. I definitely don't have the right equipment to try and resaw this piece, but I think I can get it done with a little perseverance. So I'll start by setting the blade on the table saw to center and take a pass with the blade about halfway to the maximum height. Then I'll move the blade up a little and take another pass. And then finally, one more at maximum blade height. It's got me pretty close to halfway, but not quite. So I'll have to trim a little off the thickest part just to bring the width down slightly. I didn't really want to mess with the natural live edge too much, but it will make the overall piece a little more consistent in width when it's all said and done. I'll also clean up some of the really raggedy pieces of live edge while I'm here, as I don't want any really thin pieces that could snap off. And now for the part that I'm pretty happy is over. Because the live edge portion of this board is anything but flat, I didn't want to just try and freestyle it through the saw, but I did think if I added a little shim to the cut that I've already made and then clamped this to something else flat, maybe that would work. My theory is that as long as the clamps are around where the shim is, it shouldn't fall apart into an extract out of a WorkSafe video and keep it mostly straight. So here goes. It felt so wrong, but at least the clamps gave me some illusion of safety in the form of a makeshift handle. I'll take it slow and keep my hands as high as I can away from the blade. Now there is a tiny little strip of wood in the centre that's still connected, but in hindsight that's probably a good thing. I'm not sure this would have gone as smoothly if the two halves fully separated in the cut. But with a little tap, the two halves have come apart and we can get these things glued up. I should make more things with one glue up. I'll run some wood glue along the jointed surface and get these into clamps. The inconsistency of shape makes this a bit annoying, but I'll add a couple of small clamps to keep everything in line and add a longer panel clamp to stop these from sliding apart. And I'll leave this one in the clamps overnight to set up. It's the next day and we'll pop these outer clamps and run them through the planer again to square up most of the unevenness from our professional resawing. I do have a little uneven edge from the pieces not being perfectly cut, but I should be able to get that one in the sanding. Next over to the wire wheel on the angle grinder to strip off any loose bark. I probably should have done this at the start, but we're here now. Being as gentle as I can be, I'll work into all the small nooks and crannies to make sure there isn't anything left behind that might fall off. If you were going to do this at home, I would definitely do it outside. There is little bits of bark all over the place that I'm sure I'll regret when it comes time to clean this place up. With the bark all stripped and strewn all over my shop, I'll give this one a quick sand. I'm not looking for the highest finish in the world here, as I'm going to scorch the surface on this one, so I'll just try and smooth it out up to 120 grit. With the sanding done, I'll blow this one off and start to give it some contrast. I want this piece to have some really light and dark tones, so I'm going to give it a reasonably heavy toast all over. I need to be careful that I don't overheat the glue here. We will be coating this one in epoxy, which I'm guessing will help hold everything together if I weaken the joint, but the less we have to rely on that, the better. So I'll just move the torch around until I have a gradient that I'm happy with and let this one cool off. I want this one to be kind of lighter in the centre and darker out towards the edges to give it a bit of that kind of sapwood vibe. So with the wire wheel out again, I'll knock off all the loose soot and really bear down in the centre of the wood. It will also help to accentuate the natural grains in the wood and give a real weathered feel, as well as kind of burnishing the surface to be surprisingly smooth. Before adding the finish, I'll drill some holes in for our handles. I found some cool antique brass looking ones from my local hardware store. So I'll just use my cabinet handle jig to line everything up, using the centre glue line as my guide to keep the handles in line. To seal this one in, I'm going to give it one top coat of epoxy. To keep costs down on this one, I'm just using a little cheap top coat epoxy kit. I'll simply give it a stir and pour some onto the centre of the board, and then spread it out with a tiny roller. I'm no expert on epoxy, but it seems to be levelling out okay by itself, even though this is rocking around like a wild bronco on the little painting stands. With the epoxy semi-evenly applied, I'll give it a quick degas with the torch to try and break all those little air bubbles. Full disclosure here, this had a lot of bubbles. I couldn't get them all with the torch and it looked pretty bad when it had all cured, so I did sand this off and apply another coat of epoxy to try and even it all out. But the second coat seems to have done what it was supposed to do, and we can get to the finishing touches. I'll add some little chopping board feet so it has a bit of a floating feel and doesn't want to slip around when in use. I'll add my handles, and we're done. I'm pretty stoked with how this came out. It's really satisfying to see something so rough turned into something beautiful, especially when you consider there's only about $50 worth of materials put into this project. It feels like great bang for your buck. Thanks for watching the video, everyone. If you liked it, please consider giving the video a like and subscribing to the channel. See you on the next one!